In the movie Encanto, the Madrigal's family's gift serves as a symbol of blessing and burden. At the heart of the story lies a deep exploration of family dynamics, expectations, and the cost of perfectionism. Each character's struggle reflects the pressures placed on them, especially by Abuela, whose traumatic past shapes her actions and expectations. This analysis delves into how these pressures manifest in the lives of each family member, from Isabela's expectation to be perfect and Mirabel's desire to prove her worth despite lacking a gift. Throughout their journeys, we witness the profound impact of toxic expectations and the healing that comes when they're confronted and released. In the end, Encanto is a story about breaking generational curses and the importance of love, understanding, and self-acceptance. Bruno's gift wasn't seen as a blessing by Abuela. Instead, it was viewed as a curse, something to be feared rather than understood. But in reality, his visions were meant to serve as warnings, offering guidance and caution. The problem is that Abuela didn't understand his gift, and because she didn't find it useful in the way she expected, she feared it. That fear spread to the rest of the family and even the villagers, as Abuela had a strong influence over how people thought as the head of the community. If she didn't see something as good, others wouldn't either. And eventually, this set the tone for how Bruno's gift will be perceived. In turn, Bruno internalized this perception. He started to believe what his mother thought about him was true, that his gift was a burden, a curse, something that made him less valuable than his siblings, whose gifts Abuela viewed as miracles. Feeling ostracized by both his family and the community, Bruno began to see himself as a problem. Eventually, this as well as an unclear vision he saw about his niece Mirabel led him to run away. But even though Bruno left, he never truly abandoned his family. He stayed within the walls of Casita, watching over them from the shadows. He even ate dinner with them while unseen, still wanting to be a part of their lives. This shows that Bruno didn't leave out of anger. He wasn't bitter. He loved his family deeply. But because he had been manipulated into believing his gift was harmful, he thought disappearing was the best way to protect them. And Abuela, despite loving her son, was blinded by her obsession with keeping Casita strong. She believed that maintaining and controlling the family's gifts was the key to their survival. And in prioritizing that, she pushed Bruno away. She didn't recognize the power of his gift because it didn't fit her idea of a miracle. But at the same time, I truly don't believe that her actions were rooted in malice. She thought she was doing the right thing. But regardless of her intentions, the pain she caused Bruno was undeniable. The phrase "we don't talk about Bruno" reflects the mentality found in many families when it comes to addressing uncomfortable topics. Instead of talking about the issues, they act as if they don't exist, hoping silence will make them go away. But avoidance doesn't solve problems, it just allows them to fester. This is exactly what happens with the Madrigal family. Mirabel, who is naturally curious and wants to understand her family's history, is repeatedly told to stay out of it. Yet, she can see firsthand how avoidance negatively affects her family and even Casita itself. Abuela's silence on Bruno only reinforces fear and misunderstanding, preventing the family from forming their own opinions about him. Instead, they adopt her fears as their own, blaming Bruno for their misfortunes rather than taking responsibility for their own choices. When Bruno shared his visions, people saw them as unavoidable curses instead of warnings. But the reality is that his prophecies weren't set in stone. They had the power to change their futures. But instead of heeding his warnings, they allowed fear to control them, reacting in ways that led to negative outcomes. And when those outcomes came to pass, they blamed Bruno rather than considering how their own actions contributed to their fate. Mirabel's journey proves how valuable Bruno's gift truly is. By using his vision, she's able to change the course of events for the better, showing that his ability was never the problem. It was how people chose to interpret and respond to it. If they had truly used his gift as a tool rather than treating it as a curse, things could have been different. Throughout the song "We Don't Talk About Bruno," we see how the family's fear of Bruno twisted their perception of him. Dolores sings, "He told me that the man of my dreams would be out of touch, betrothed to another." She likely took this as a negative prophecy, that she would never find love. But by the end of the movie, we see that she does end up with Mariano. This proves that Bruno's visions weren't inherently bad. They were simply glimpses of potential futures, and the outcomes depended on how people responded. Pepa's verse provides another example of this distortion. She recalls Bruno walking in with a mischievous grin and telling her it looks like rain on her wedding day. In her memory, there was no clouds in the sky, yet her wedding day was ruined by a hurricane, which she blames on Bruno. But when we consider how Pepa's emotions control the weather, it's clear that the storm was a result of her own anxiety. Bruno likely saw the potential for rain because he understood her emotional state, but instead of taking it as a sign to stay calm, she panicked, which directly caused the storm. This pattern repeats throughout the song. People take Bruno's words at face value and assume the worst because they already believe he is bad. But in reality, it's their own choices that shapes the outcome, not Bruno's visions. He never actually predicted the future in an unchangeable way, he only saw possibilities. But because Abuela never let him fully explore his power, he didn't even understand it to its full potential. This lack of understanding led to misinterpretation, both by him and those around him. We see a similar situation with Isabela. For most of the movie, she only creates beautiful flowers because that's what Abuela expects of her. But when she finally experiments with her power, she realizes that she can grow all kinds of plants, even ones that aren't conventionally perfect. If Abuela had allowed Isabela to fully embrace her ability, she could have been growing things such as food for her community instead of just decorative plants. The same can be said for Bruno. If he had been given the freedom to understand and refine his gift, the family might have recognized his value sooner. Ultimately, the rule of we don't talk about Bruno was a reflection of Abuela's deep fear and need for control. She saw Bruno's gift as a threat rather than an asset, and instead of working to understand it, she just shut him out. She believed that she was protecting Casita and her family, but in reality, her actions were only causing harm. Bruno isn't evil and his gift isn't a curse. He's a loving, selfless person who sacrificed his own happiness to protect the family that rejected him. And even in exile, he continued to watch over them, proving that he never stopped caring. The real issue wasn't his visions. It was Abuela's fear and trauma which led her to misunderstand and mistreat him. Throughout the movie, Isabela is expected by Abuela to be perfect, only creating flawless flowers. She spends most of the film doing just that, never fully exploring the true potential of her gift. This immense amount of pressure not only limits her powers, but also affects her personality. Due to Abuela's expectations, Isabela begins to embody a sense of perfectionism that ultimately makes her unhappy. She's even pressured into marrying someone who she clearly doesn't love, further reinforcing the idea that she must meet others' expectations rather than follow her own desires. This frustration manifests in her relationship with Mirabel. Throughout the film, Isabela often comes across as rude to her sister. While some of this could be attributed to normal sibling dynamics, there's a deeper layer to their interactions. Isabela resents the constant expectation that she must be perfect, and in contrast, Mirabel, who doesn't have a gift, isn't held to the same impossible standards. This represents a kind of freedom that Isabela envies, and this likely contributes to the tension between them, making Isabela lash out on Mirabel even when she doesn't mean to. It isn't until a pivotal moment with Mirabel that Isabela finally breaks free from those constraints. While arguing with her sister, she admits that she was never truly happy just making beautiful flowers all the time. In that moment of release, she creates something entirely different, a cactus. This newfound creation allows Isabela to realize just how much Abuela's expectations and the influence that she holds over the family have been holding her back. And for the first time, she understands that her powers extend beyond making things beautiful. Her powers are about creation, growth, and expression. By embracing this discovery, Isabela not only unlocks her true potential, but also finds genuine happiness. She's no longer bound by the need to be perfect for others, and she begins to express herself freely. This transformation even changes her relationship with Mirabel. Once she was finally able to let go of the pressure to be flawless, she became a better person at heart, growing kinder and more appreciative of her sister. This moment perfectly illustrates how Abuela's strict control over the family didn't just harm Mirabel. It negatively affected everyone, including those who seemed to be thriving under her expectations. From the very beginning of the movie, it's clear that Abuela expects Pepa to bottle up her emotions and simply move on. One of the first examples of this happens when Pepa is looking for Antonio before his gifting ceremony. She's visibly stressed, explaining to Abuela that she's worried because she can't find him. But instead of offering comfort or acknowledging Pepa's feelings, Abuela points out the storm cloud forming above her head, completely dismissing the reason behind it. This pattern continues throughout the film. Later, after the family learns that their magic is fading and Casita is falling apart, Pepa is understandably overwhelmed and causes a winter storm. Rather than comforting her or helping her process what's happening, Abuela yells at her to calm down. While it's true that Pepa's emotions affect the weather and in turn others, it's unfair to expect her to suppress them entirely. Instead of being taught how to properly manage her emotions and develop healthy coping mechanisms, Pepa was conditioned to suppress her feelings for the sake of others' convenience. Abuela's treatment of Pepa stems from her own unprocessed grief and trauma. At the end of the movie, we see what happened after the death of her husband, Abuelo. Immediately following his death, the candle created a refuge for Abuela and the rest of the community. And from that moment on, she stepped into her role as leader. She didn't have time to sit with or process her emotions. She had to keep moving forward, raising her 3 children, and later helping raise their children as well. And this only became a cycle where Abuela had to bury her own pain in order to be strong for her family and the community. But she never had the opportunity to fully grieve and heal. Abuela passed down the same mindset to Pepa. Just as she forced herself to bottle up her emotions, she expects Pepa to do the same. But while Abuela's emotional suppression was a survival mechanism born out of necessity, it forced Pepa to live by the same standard and only created more harm. Luisa was one of the first Madrigals to notice that something was wrong with the magic. She began to feel physically weaker, but she kept it to herself even though it was clearly affecting her. She felt that she had to push through because so many people, especially Abuela, were counting on her. The pressure to be strong was overwhelming, but she couldn't afford to show weakness. This pressure was reinforced just before this moment when a family gathered for a meeting. Abuela emphasized how important their gifts were in maintaining order and reminded them to be grateful for their abilities. She then announced that they will be working twice as hard today to serve the community using their gifts. For Luisa, this only solidified the belief that she had no choice but to keep going. She was the one who physically held everything together in her mind, and this mindset was shaped for years due to Abuela's expectations. Luisa believed that if she didn't hold everything together, the community would fall apart. And despite her best efforts, the weight of her responsibilities were crushing her. It felt like no one truly appreciated her. Everything she did was simply just expected. She, like every other gifted family member, wasn't celebrated for their contributions. They were just fulfilling a duty. And this was a direct result of Abuela's unhealthy expectations, which placed the family's gifts above their well-being. When Luisa finally tried to voice her concerns, she turned to Abuela for guidance, admitting that she's been feeling weak. But instead of acknowledging Luisa's struggles, Abuela dismissed her concerns and immediately shifted the blame onto Mirabel, demanding to know what she's done to cause this. Rather than addressing the real issue, the magic weakening, and the toll it was taking on Luisa, Abuela refused to listen, deflecting responsibility and reinforcing the harmful mindset that their gifts were more important than their individual struggles. From the night after her gifting ceremony, Mirabel has carried the weight of Abuela's expectations. That was the night Abuela told Mirabel about their past, how Casita, the candle, and their family's miracles came to be. From that moment, Abuela made it clear that once Mirabel received her gift, she would be expected to use it to support their family and make them proud. So even at such a young age, Mirabel felt the pressure to be perfect for Abuela. And as we know, she never received a gift. That night at her ceremony, in front of everyone, she was crushed when her door disappeared, leaving her to be the only Madrigal without a gift. And while Abuela may not have intended to make Mirabel feel useless, her actions did just that. Over time, Mirabel was made to feel as though she didn't belong, like she was less valuable than the rest of the family because she lacked a gift. But despite this, Mirabel never stopped trying to make her family proud. Even as she grew older, we see her silently reminding herself in the opening sequence of the movie that she has to do everything she can to contribute. She takes on small but meaningful tasks like setting the table and waking the rest of the family, trying to find her own way to be useful. The difference between Mirabel and the rest of the family isn't just the fact that she doesn't have a gift, it's that despite not having one, she wants so desperately to prove herself. The other family members, of course, also prioritize making their family proud, but in many ways, they do so out of obligation. Because they have gifts, they feel that it's their duty to use them, even at the cost of their own happiness. But Mirabel, on the other hand, is repeatedly told that she has nothing to prove. She's told that she doesn't have to work as hard because she doesn't have a gift, but she doesn't let that stop her. She clings to the memory of Abuela's words from that night of her ceremony. The expectation that she would use her gift to strengthen the family and bring them pride. And ever since that moment when she never got one, she does everything that she can in her power to prove that she still is enough. But no matter how hard she tries, Abuela never sees her efforts as enough. Even when Mirabel attempts to help around the house, Abuela tells her to step aside and leave things to the family members with gifts. Because in Abuela's eyes, everything must be perfect and only those with powers are reliable enough to ensure that. In this moment, Mirabel walks away clearly hurt. And Julieta, noticing this, gently reminds Abuela to be kind, especially since it's the night of Antonio's gift ceremony. This was the first ceremony since Mirabel's, which was an emotional disaster for her. But instead of acknowledging Mirabel's pain, Abuela dismisses it entirely, saying that everyone will have a hard time tonight if Antonio's ceremony doesn't go as planned. While the Madrigal's family's gifts are undeniably important to their way of life, this was an incredibly selfish thing to say. Abuela completely disregarded Mirabel's feelings, ignoring everything she's done to contribute simply because it doesn't fit her idea of what's good enough. When Mirabel later discovers that Casita is falling apart, she immediately brings it to Abuela's attention. But instead of listening, Abuela shuts her out. To her, this is nothing but bad news, something that she doesn't want to acknowledge. So rather than facing the truth, she turns a blind eye and pretends that everything is fine. One moment that really stood out to me at this point in the movie is Mirabel's conversation with Julieta about what she saw happening to Casita. Julieta clearly wants to support her daughter, but she's hesitant. She's afraid that if Mirabel keeps pushing, she'll end up like Bruno, ostracized from the family. This just goes to show the stronghold that Abuela has over everyone. No one wants to step out of line or challenge her authority because they've seen what happens when someone does. Bruno was forced into hiding. No one can speak his name. And the fear of suffering the same fate keeps everyone in check. That's what makes Mirabel's actions at this point of the movie so powerful. She does something that no one else in her family had ever had the courage to do. She stands up to Abuela. Instead of allowing her to continue to manipulate and emotionally damage those around her, Mirabel speaks the truth. She tells Abuela that she's the one causing everything to fall apart. And through her courage and empathy, Mirabel is able to reach Abuela in a way that no one else has. She finally gets her to understand the harm she's done, not just to Mirabel, but to everyone, including herself. In the end, Mirabel is the one that initiates the healing process for the entire family. And it was through her determination and understanding that she helped Abuela realize that the Madrigal's worth has never been about their gifts. It's always been about their love for one another. Abuela had a traumatic past. She was forced to flee from the only home that she had ever known, alongside other villagers and her husband, with nothing but their newborn triplets. And as if this wasn't devastating enough, she then had to witness her husband lose his life right in front of her while he was pleading for the lives of his loved ones to be spared. Then, with no time to grieve and no space to process her pain, she was left alone with 3 newborns and an entire village looking to her for guidance and stability. But in the midst of this tragedy, something miraculous happened. The magic that created the casita was born, providing them with a new home and a source of protection. But with this blessing came an unspoken burden. Abuela felt pressure to maintain the refuge they had been given. So she bottled up her emotions and committed herself entirely to keeping the family and the magic alive, believing that the best way to do this was through control. From the moment the Madrigals received their gifts, Abuela placed an expectation on them to use those gifts in a way she deemed as beneficial to the family. We see this clearly in a flashback to Mirabel's gift ceremony, where Abuela tells her that once she receives her gifts, she will use it to strengthen the family and make them proud. This expectation wasn't just encouragement, but it was pressure. Pressure to be perfect, pressure to serve, and pressure to uphold the miracle at all costs. Throughout the movie, we see how this pressure deeply affects each family member. Abuela, in her desperation to preserve the magic, doesn't allow her children and grandchildren to explore their own desires. She dictates how they use their gifts, never once asking how they feel about it. She invalidates their emotions and constantly reinforces the idea that no matter how hard they try, it's never good enough. And a lot of that pressure truly came from Abuela herself, thinking that she wasn't good enough. She projected her own fears onto her family, unknowingly passing down her unhealed trauma. She was so scared of losing the miracle that she overlooked what the miracle truly was. It wasn't the gifts or the casita. The real miracle was the family itself. The fact that they survived. The fact that they built a new life together. The fact that despite the tragedy, the love that started it all still lived on. When Mirabel first notices the cracks forming in Casita, she immediately warns Abuela, but Abuela refuses to listen. She publicly reassures the family that the magic is strong, knowing that everyone trusts her word as the leader of their community. But later that night, Mirabel overhears Abuela privately praying and admitting that she saw the cracks herself. And instead of addressing the issue openly, Abuela chooses to ignore it and make Mirabel seem crazy. This is where Abuela's behavior crosses into gaslighting. She actively tries to convince Mirabel and the rest of the family that what she saw wasn't real. This is the same treatment she gave to Bruno. When Bruno's visions didn't align with what she wanted, she dismissed him, just as she dismissed Mirabel. Instead of addressing the truth, she shut them out, hoping that ignoring the problem will make it go away. But as the cracks in the house worsened and the magic faded, it's revealed that Julieta and Augustin already knew about the magic and Mirabel's attempt to save it. When Abuela finds out, she lashes out on them, insisting that they should have told her. In response, they tell her that they were just protecting their daughter because they know how hard Abuela has always been on her. That moment should have been a wake-up call, but Abuela, still unwilling to acknowledge her faults, justifies her actions by saying that she was only trying to do what's best for her family. Then, in one of the most painful moments, Abuela blames everything on Mirabel. She tells Mirabel that the cracks in the house started because of her, that everyone started losing their gifts because of her, that Bruno left because of her. But the truth is, it was never Mirabel. It was Abuela all along. Yet no one stands up for Mirabel. And that, more than anything, highlights just how much fear Abuela instilled in her family. They were all too afraid to speak up and go against her because they had spent their entire lives walking on eggshells, striving for an impossible perfection just to earn her approval. But at last, Mirabel does what no one else has the courage to do and tells Abuela the truth. She tells her that she was the one that's been hurting the family, not Mirabel. And for the first time, Abuela listens. She finally understands that in her attempt to protect her family, she's been suffocating them. That she had been so focused on preserving the magic that she lost sight of what truly mattered, her family's happiness and well-being. Mirabel too learned something in this moment. She finally understands Abuela's actions. It was never about cruelty or bad intentions, but it was about fear. A deep, lingering fear of losing everything again. A fear so strong that Abuela thought that the only way to protect her family was through control. But in trying to shield them from suffering, she caused a different type of suffering. Through this moment of raw honesty, Mirabel and Abuela finally saw each other. They reach a place of mutual understanding, and from there, they're able to move forward. They're able to rebuild not just the casita, but the relationships that have been damaged along the way. The journey of the Madrigal family in Encanto is one of growth, understanding, and emotional healing. By confronting the impossible expectations placed upon them, each family member is able to discover their true potential and embrace the beauty of their individuality. Abuela's transformation from a figure of control to one of compassion reflects the power of love and the importance of letting go of fear. She is the perfect example of what it means to pass down generational trauma. Her unhealed suffering impacted those who came after her, causing pain and fear to ripple through the generations. While Abuela was never evil, nor intentionally cruel, her actions were driven by the fear of losing the miracle and the inability to process her own trauma. She thought that what she was doing was for the best, but that doesn't excuse her actions and the harm she caused. Ultimately, Abuela's healing conversation with Mirabel opened her eyes to the deeper truths about herself and her family, leading her to change her ways. Encanto reminds us that the real magic lies not within perfection or gifts, but in the love and understanding that can heal even the deepest wounds. Through Mirabel's courage and Abuela's willingness to listen, the family finds a new path to move forward. One that's rooted in love, self-acceptance, and the recognition that true miracles come from within. I would like to know your thoughts on Abuela's actions in Encanto. Let me know your thoughts down below and subscribe for more content like this.